The Jurassic period, a world defined by the impossible. Life here did not merely flourish, it grew to heights and weights that defy modern terrestrial biology. At the heart of this colossal ecology stood the Brachiosaurus, a name that translates simply to arm lizard. A deceptively humble title for a true biological spectacle. This animal was the physical embodiment of the limits of life on land, a colossal four-legged fortress that commanded the ancient landscape. But what does it take to sustain a creature of this scale? What was the true caloric cost of building and maintaining an animal that could weigh as much as an entire herd of African elephants? This question forces us to move beyond mere anatomical description into the realms of paleophysiology and bioenergetics. For the Brachiosaurus, every aspect of its design was a direct function of its insatiable need for sustenance. From the relatively small skull to the towering pillar of its neck, each component speaks to an organism optimized for efficiency. When we analyze its skeletal structure, we uncover an architecture built for vertical reach and static mass. The humerus, or upper arm bone, was longer than the femur, giving the animal a distinctive, sloping profile. This structural advantage allowed it to graze higher than any other creature of its time. Its teeth, shaped like spatulas or pegs, were ideal for stripping leaves and needles from high branches. They were not designed for detailed chewing. And this is a crucial insight. The Brachiosaurus was built for volume, not finesse. It needed to process immense quantities of tough, fibrous vegetation quickly to meet the relentless demands of its massive frame. The sheer mass of this animal presents a primary challenge for paleobiological estimation. How did it all work? Modern scaling laws suggest that for every increase in body mass, the basal metabolic rate must also rise, albeit disproportionately. Early estimates once placed the Brachiosaurus in excess of 80 metric tons. But more rigorous methodologies, accounting for its extensive system of air sacs, paint a more refined picture. These air sacs, discovered within the vertebrae of sauropods, made their massive skeletons astonishingly lightweight, a triumph of biological architecture. Most estimates now settle between 45 and 60 metric tons. Yet even at the lower end of that range, the daily energetic requirement remains staggering. Assuming a mesothermic or intermediate metabolic rate, we can begin to appreciate the scale of its hunger. This metabolic compromise, a midpoint between cold-blooded efficiency and warm-blooded growth speed, defines the physiology of giants. The Brachiosaurus was, in essence, a feeding engine operating almost continuously. Its neck alone, a marvel of biological engineering, consisted of 13 hyper-elongated vertebrae. The energy required to lift and maneuver this 6-ton appendage through a single day of feeding would have been monumental. This feat demanded a powerful, 4-chambered heart, capable of generating immense pressure to pump blood to its elevated head. But the payoff was extraordinary. The Brachiosaurus alone could access the untouched bounty of the high canopy, the conifer and cycad forests that crowned the Jurassic landscape. Its entire existence was a caloric calculation, a perpetual quest to acquire enough energy to maintain its colossal heat mass. This endless energy demand drove an existence of near constant motion, near constant feeding, and near constant growth. It was the apex consumer of vegetation, a living furnace fueled by the forests of the Jurassic. Now, let's open the fossil record and resurrect the story of this bizarre survivor. The Brachiosaurus was, by necessity, a Jurassic feeding machine. To meet the immense caloric deficit created by its own mass, its entire lifestyle must have revolved around continuous, systematic foraging. Paleoecologists estimate that a creature of this magnitude, operating at a moderate metabolic rate, would need to consume between 2 and 4% of its body weight in fresh vegetation every single day. For a 50-ton animal, that translates to a relentless intake of 1,000 to 2,000 kilograms of food every 24 hours. This was not a task performed in short, leisurely feeding bouts. It demanded a non-stop cycle of stripping and swallowing, a biological engine in constant operation. The anatomy of Brachiosaurus was perfectly adapted to this continuous consumption. Its dentition was not designed for meticulous chewing. It lacked the complex dental batteries of its later cousins. Instead, its peg-shaped teeth acted like rakes, efficiently stripping needles from conifers and leaves from tall cycads. The real work of breaking down the tough cellulose and lignin was outsourced to the gut. The animal would swallow vast quantities of vegetation, whole or coarsely chopped. Inside, an enormous, likely 4-chambered stomach functioned as a massive fermentation vat. Within this anaerobic chamber, colonies of specialized microbes slowly transformed unyielding plant matter into usable energy. The fossil record preserves the clues. The deep, wide ribcage, a cathedral of bone, once housed this colossal digestive engine. It is evidence of a gut-centered survival strategy, one that prioritized processing bulk over speed. The sheer scale of this continuous consumption defines its ecological role. Brachiosaurus was not simply large, it was a keystone species that reshaped its world. As it moved through the forests, it systematically defoliated the upper canopy, pruning the Jurassic tree line and sculpting the landscape itself. In this sense, Brachiosaurus was not merely an animal, it was a living landscape architect. Its constant foraging created sunlit clearings that allowed new, lower-level flora to flourish beneath the broken canopy. Every motion of its massive neck, every mouthful stripped from the trees, reshaped the biodiversity of its world. It carved a patchwork of habitats, some heavily browsed, others left untouched, a mosaic of life sculpted by appetite. Even its colossal droppings, the coprolites we rarely find today, hint at the vast scale of its influence. These nutrient-rich deposits would have fertilized the very soil that fed the forests in which it roamed, completing a perfect cyclical exchange between body and earth. But this endless hunger dictated more than its anatomy. It dictated its behavior. A 50-ton creature could not linger long in one place without exhausting the local vegetation. Driven by instinct and caloric necessity, Brachiosaurus likely lived in slow-motion migration. If they were indeed social, their herds would have been vast, moving ecosystems unto themselves, each one consuming and replenishing the landscape in an endless circuit. Comparative paleontology reinforces this picture. These giants required immense, continuous territories to sustain even a single herd. And now, we must bust a persistent myth. The image of sauropods wallowing in lakes to support their weight. The biomechanics tell a different story. Their feet, vast, column-like, engineered for load-bearing on land, prove that they were creatures of the earth, not the water. Immersion would have crushed their chest cavity under pressure, making breathing not merely difficult, but nearly impossible. The Brachiosaurus was built for the rigors of a terrestrial world, a behemoth of the Jurassic landmass. Its size was its shield. Against predators like Allosaurus and the formidable Torvosaurus, sheer scale was deterrence enough. Its neck, far from being just a feeding tool, was a multi-purpose marvel, a towering sentinel for vigilance, and a counterbalance for the weight of its titanic form. The bulk of its body was its shield. The immense size of Brachiosaurus was the ultimate evolutionary answer to a world populated by equally formidable carnivores, a biological stalemate powered by an endless engine of vegetation. The life of this giant was defined by slow, immense processes: continuous feeding, steady accumulation of mass, a deliberate, methodical pace of existence, standing in contrast to the rapid-fire metabolism of smaller, fleeting lives. Yet to truly understand this colossus, we must look inside the bone. Through the science of histology, we move beyond external dimensions and peer into the biological clock that once ticked inside this behemoth. The fossilized bones of Brachiosaurus bear delicate growth rings, lines of arrested growth, or lags, much like the rings of a tree. Each ring marks a cycle of life, times of plenty and times of scarcity. From these, paleobiologists estimate that this creature's journey to full maturity was not measured in years, but in decades. It grew rapidly in youth, a biological race to outpace predators. But adulthood brought longevity. Perhaps a century or more of life beneath the Jurassic sun. This prodigious lifespan was directly tied to its metabolic rhythm. A fully warm-blooded metabolism would have demanded an impossible daily food intake. Yet a purely cold-blooded existence would have stifled the rapid growth seen in its youth. The truth lies between extremes, in a concept we call gigantothermy, or inertial homeothermy. In this system, size itself becomes the furnace. The sheer volume of the body retains heat efficiently, losing and gaining it only slowly. Essentially, Brachiosaurus carried a giant internal heat reservoir, a natural thermal inertia that stabilized its temperature without constant energy expenditure. This low-cost thermoregulation freed up its caloric budget. The energy drawn from the conifer canopy could now be channeled into growth, endurance, and survival, rather than the endless fueling of metabolic fire. The story of Brachiosaurus concludes not with a dramatic hunt, but with its legacy etched in stone. Its enormous scale ensured that when an individual finally succumbed to age or misfortune, its remains became a monument to the Jurassic world itself. The heavy, robust bones, coupled with the sheer volume of its body, increased the chance of preservation. And so, across millions of years, its story endured, a record of life written in the language of fossil and stone. The Great Morrison Formation of North America and its sister, deposits in Africa, serve as the archives of this tale. Within them, the remains of Brachiosaurus are found among the smaller creatures that once lived in its shadow. Their proximity tells us something profound. It confirms the role of this giant as a central pillar of the Jurassic food web, not only as a living consumer of the forests, but as a posthumous windfall for the scavengers that followed. In life, it shaped the canopy. In death, it nourished the ground. Brachiosaurus was not a random flourish of evolution. It was the ultimate expression of what life could achieve when abundance met opportunity. Its towering frame was a calculated biological solution to the pressures of its age, a triumph of adaptation at the edge of the possible. When we deconstruct its anatomy, when we estimate its colossal caloric needs and trace its ecological impact, we do more than resurrect a dinosaur. We reconstruct an entire world, a living system where gravity, heat, and biology were pushed to their natural limits. Its shadow must have stretched across the plains like a moving continent. And yet, in its immensity, it carried a quiet elegance, proof that nature's grandest designs are also its simplest. Conclusion. The existence of Brachiosaurus offers a humble reminder that the rules of life have never been fixed. They bend and adapt to the conditions of their time. Its vast, slow-moving world, where a single life could span a century, now survives only in these silent, colossal remnants. And through them, we glimpse the forgotten majesty of deep time and the elegant simplicity with which nature solves the problems of impossible scale.